Welcome to explAInED. We have Makiri Pugh here with us. We're very excited to talk to you. Makiri, we start our podcast by asking people to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about their journey, but also define what AI means to them. So I'll turn it over to you.
Well, my name is Makiri Pugh. I am a career educator. I'm currently the managing director of teaching, learning, and innovation for Maya Angelou Public Charter School. So that means all things education related, as well as some other things like the innovation part where AI kind of kicks in, right? I've been on all levels of education. I started as a substitute teacher. So I went from substitute teacher to one-on-one to a special needs student, to social studies teacher, to teacher and grade level lead, to teacher and then instructional coach, and then AP. So I've been all around the block, different schools and things like that, but definitely think it's been a pretty comprehensive experience. For me, AI represents, I just say opportunity, because I think it's a real opportunity to close gaps for students who have been marginalized or students who have been historically harder to reach. And I think we have a very unique opportunity with AI to bridge some gaps that we haven't been able to bridge in the past. So I'm excited about that.
One of the things that I picked up from reading some of your posts and some of the information that you put out there is that I think you're a systems thinker. I think that you see how the system builds and ways to build routines and habits that change the system. Am I right on that?
Absolutely. See, systems outlive you, and that's what matters. When I leave a position, what am I leaving behind? If I leave and there's a void, that means I didn't leave behind systems for how those processes that were successful could be repeated. And I think AI gives a unique opportunity to enhance systems thinking and expand systems thinking.
So how do you use systems thinking to move the work? Like that's always interesting to me. Like people that see systems, like I imagine you probably have access to a lot of whiteboards and you do a beautiful mind thing and chart things out and but then not everybody sees things that way. So you have to kind of translate it to get the work moving. So in the case of AI, how do those two things connect?
So first of all, like with AI, there's a lot of scaffolding that needs to take place. We talk about that for students, but we also need to bridge that gap of understanding and understand there's different levels of AI understanding, right? And sometimes the people who may be in charge may have a less of an understanding than you do. That's not bad. We're just that early. We're that early. I liken it to what happened when we had PowerPoint, Microsoft Word, and Excel coming in. And I was like, yo, we need to have all of our students typing things now, which 10 years ago was kind of radical, right? Like, no, they can still write. Now, pretty much no students are writing by hand, right? So those transitions kind of naturally happen. When it comes to systems thinking, what I'm trying to do is essentially embed a process of cognition or a process of doing things. And here's what I mean by that. I'll give you guys an example. I was working with the AP, coaching the AP, and I asked that AP, how can you scale what you already do, and how can you embed things so that they're kind of automated so you don't have to keep coaching them? So just a simple example. If we have a common board configuration, that is not something you necessarily need to continue to coach. Once you introduce it, set it as an expectation, model it, you can go in and you can spot check those things, but now it's a part of your system. Now it's a checkpoint. So that's an oversimplified example, but I'm always trying to figure out what can be automatic in the process that we're doing, embedded in the system, ingrained in the system. It also kind of goes to culture, right? We all have different cultures in our school, the way we greet each other, the way we interact with students, that's embedded and ingrained. The leadership doesn't constantly talk about, here's what we do, here's a culture, right? You embed that, you model that, it becomes muscle memory. And I think that's the opportunity we can do. And I think AI gives us a unique opportunity to do that as well.
I was interested when I was reading some of your work that you made a case for district-owned LLMs, which sounds like it could relate a little bit to what you're talking about right now as far as like having an ingrained system. And I just wondered if you could tell us about that.
Absolutely. So let me start here, right? And this is part of when I went down the AI rabbit hole. When you look at, I'm not going to name any specific tools, but there are a lot of really great tools out there for automation, right? They've uploaded templates, and then you find out the back end is a ChatGPT. It is a Claude. It is something we all have access to. And then you realize, as educators, we can program our own GPTs directly into the platform if you're a Plus or a Pro user. So the reason I'm an advocate for bespoke AI, right, like customized GDT builds, is because every district has a different set of values that need to be embedded. And I'll just give an example. We work with justice-involved youth. We believe in personalized instruction. We also have a very relational culture. How do you embed that into what it looks like in a coaching admin GPT? How it creates scripts, how it defaults in its thinking when you have issues and challenges within your org. That's not something that can be customized. You guys are based in Vermont, right?
Yes.
Demographically, your students will typically probably need a different type of intervention than some of my kids in DC. Different cultural experiences. You guys have beautiful mountains in Vermont conceptually, right? You think about context. Your students may not know about walking and taking the metro and the bus, right? So those are things that get embedded. So now when we're creating an example, it may reverse engineer. So there's a standardized test, for instance, and it's going to give an example of, and this is a true example, kindling in the woods. My students wouldn't know about that. They don't even see trees, right? So now I can build an AI that's going to scaffold that for them and relate that to an example of something they would see in their community to bridge that gap and vice versa, right? So that's why it can embed the values. And I always say, here's what I say when I'm speaking to people individually. I say voice, calibration, and recursion. Voice, it sounds like your district, your top leaders, your top coaches, your top teachers. Calibration, whatever your value system is. DCPS, DC Public Schools, is whole child anti-racist. How does that show up? How does that show up in planning and things like that, right? And then the recursive part. When we're prompting into some of these beautiful automated systems that are out here, we're training their data, we're training their bots. When we train our own, there's a loop of data and input. So now your customized, bespoke internal GPTs get better over time from all the use versus us training someone else's. So that's just kind of the quick and dirty. Hopefully I explained that well enough. I think I'll just say this, as educators, we're not really tech people. We're education people. We're here for the betterment of students. But this is the time we're going to have to get outside of our comfort zone and have enough understanding of the technology to be able to make the responsible decisions. I do think the future of AI, the future of education is AI. And it'll either be controlled by educators or it'll be controlled by some people who've probably never been in schools. And I don't think those people are bad. I just always think educator first. When I see educators who've been in the field and understand how these things truly apply, I think those platforms are the ones that do the best. Those systems are the ones that work the best.
Agreed. I really like your idea of the human-centered augmentation. And what you're talking about these custom LLMs, most of my experience this year, I work in a high school as well, is around creating these custom chatbots. And I think I've been telling my teachers, I think this is the way to go because they can control the data that it's pulling from. They know that it's pulling from the lessons they've developed, their curriculum, their rubrics. And so in looking at, I know you're a systems guy, but coming straight down into the classroom, what's one task that teachers could use this human-centered augmentation with AI? Like, where should they start?
I actually believe in starting with lesson planning. Now, we don't need to get into the mechanics of how you build these things out, but let's say you built out a very beautiful, bespoke, custom GPT. Start with lesson planning. Here's why. If you're a good teacher, you spend most of your time planning. You spend hours and hours upon hours of week planning. If you can teach the system to create a lesson plan that is even 75%, 80% of what you would like, and then you go in and tweak it, well, now you saved yourself time. I call it the condensing of time. But it also changed the way I coach you because now I know you have a quality lesson plan that meets the standard. So now I'm coaching you on pedagogy and relationship building, which are the two things we know are most important: teacher moves and how you are interacting with your students. But we don't get to that because the lesson plans don't even tend to be what we need them to be to even put in front of students. So now I know the bespoke EBT for my district, there's no such thing as a bad lesson plan. Now, there might be bad execution of that lesson plan, but there's no bad lesson plan now. So now how do you execute it? One other thing I'll just kind of throw in here, novice teachers, scripting and rationale These custom and bespoke LLMs is a tool. When it gives a teacher a script, one of the ones I built out, it also gives rationale. So it's explaining why you said that, why you're making that teacher move. So if I'm a principal and I have 50 teachers and I can't get to all their classrooms, but I've embedded my thinking into this system, it's now giving you feedback on why you're making the moves you're making according to our belief system of what should be happening. And that is another opportunity. And this is why I say human-centered. There are things that AI cannot do and will not be able to do. I know we think AI optimist robots are going to come in and replace everybody, but no, like judgment cannot be replaced. Relationship building cannot be replaced. The comfort that a student feels, the family feels with you as an individual cannot be replaced. There are moves you make as a teacher. I think what teachers make like 500 moves a class or something crazy, 500 choices or decisions just in one period. AI cannot replace that, but it can support it. It can augment it. It can reduce the load and also retain teachers and frankly, teachers not needing to take as much time away, not being burnt out. That's what I'm excited about as well.
I think that what you're saying, it would be a wonderful addition to any mentorship program too in a school district.
100%. And the work I would like to do, and I'm going to create a segue here. We don't talk enough about professional development. We're not talking about prompt engineering for teachers and students. We're not talking about ethics classes for students and for teachers. One of the gaps is that we're just going from not to 60. We're just looking at the tools. I'll give you guys a tidbit. Now, a lot of these companies are embedding AI tools into their systems, our MTSS system, our social studies platform, and that's beautiful. But AI add-on should not be something we just add in there like a button and don't train teachers on. How to use this, when to use this, when it's good, when it's not good. We know that AI outputs sometimes are not the best. Sometimes you need to go in and reprompt or you need to edit. How do you identify gaps or weaknesses in the output of this AI? And I'll give you guys another just example. And this happened this morning. I had a colleague reach out. Her principal essentially did an AI survey. This is another district. Did an AI survey and then gave an AI response. And it was what should this administrator stop doing? What should this administrator continue to do? There was no neutral category, for instance, right? Just different things that were just very generic. The feedback was you should work to build better relationships with your staff. You should make sure that your staff feels like you're being ethical at all. So anybody in America who's an administrator, build better relationships with your staff, be more generic because it had no context and no understanding. And this is once again back to the bespoke and custom LLM. Well, if it knows you work on a school with 50% L and you are the AP oversped in compliance and it understands these different demographics, it's going to come up with different things. But also there's a difference in generic prompting versus prompting over time because this system learns and it begins to think the way that the user does. And that's something we don't talk enough about. Is AI going to make everybody smarter? No, it'll make people who are smarter, and it'll make people who are not as smart. It'll highlight it. You can tell when it's a very generic AI email that nobody read over, right? You can tell these things. They're easily identifiable, and they don't make you stronger unless you're using a certain, we'll go back to system of thinking when you're using it, particularly when it comes to education.
Do you think that it's back to a systems? I'm a systems thinker too. Doesn't help me out in fast food joints, but so we're looking for entry points with teachers and administrators into this. And because it's just the floodgates are open, people are entering the AI conversation from different points. Some start with the environmental impacts and they're just nope, I'm not even looking at it. Other folks jump to immediately doing things with students without them really understanding it. And then others, I think I've found more return on investment starting with individual practice, like you're talking about with professional learning and professional development. What are some of the strategies that you've used to take people from those different entry points and get them calibrated to be able to level up cognitive outcomes for themselves and for kids? What strategies have you used?
Yeah, so I think we need to be 100% bottom up with this. We got to start with teachers. And before we put anything AI related in front of students, we need to make sure that our staffs are competent with it. I don't want my students doing anything AI facing if I can't trust that my staff understands ethics, implications, those types of things. one of the things that I ask teachers, like, and I already know this, but like, what are your pain points? It's always planning, it's always time, things like that. And I'll say, hey, test this tool out, or let me give you an example of a tool. I want to get your feedback on it. So when I'm building out custom GPTs, I'm always soliciting feedback. Hey, type a prompt in here. Some people are advanced AI using it, like, all right, cool, let me. And then there are those people who like have never used it. Literally, I had a teacher and an administrator who had never used anything AI related. And I'm like, hey, just check this out. It's supposed to do X, Y, and Z. Give it something that would help you in your position, in your work, right? Like, and it might be, hey, I got a difficult coaching conversation. I just had 2 teachers get into it in front of students. And then it's looking like, okay, what's that output, right? And it was funny because one of those people actually was like, hey, can I print this off and use this to help guide? But so starting there, where can I support you? Or, hey, I have a lot of English papers to grade. Or let's just say I got 10 English papers to grade. Are there recurring themes that we see as a weakness in all student writing versus things that I need to parse out and work with in small groups? So looking at things that can be related directly to the practice of teachers, this is really important. Another example, a gradual release model. We use a gradual release model in most of our school sites. I've trained it to be always do things in a gradual release manner. So you're always going to have the I do, you do, we do portions of it, right? Independent practice and all that's embedded in every. So structurally, for those teachers who struggle to embed their lesson plans in that format now, once again, it's structured. So I start with the teachers. I try to give examples, particularly for the early users. Hey, just try this out. Tell me what you think. I'll hand them my laptop. Hey, just try this out. It's just a tool. And it usually gets some curiosity, right? And then they'll challenge you too, right? They'll ask questions like, well, how do you guard against this? How do we assure IEPs are not being uploaded? How do we assure sensitive student information, right? So they'll also challenge, which I think is good. I think you also need to welcome challenges. What are your apprehensions to using AI? What do you think might be ethical AI use? And I think we don't need to discount people who don't have knowledge of AI. I think we need to include them in the conversation like we would a difficult teacher in the planning of the year, right? Like they'll tell you your most difficult teacher, have them be a part of the planning. Then they have to own it. Then they're going to have to give you honest feedback. I think we need to do the same thing. And I'll give you this tip that one of the things that I suggested to a district recently was to have a AI ethics committee and an AI working committee. So the AI working committee, working on the ground, implementation, reports to that ethics committee. That ethics committee does not have to be full of AI experts. It can be people who don't know a lot about AI. It can be people who are skeptical because they're going to ask the right questions. And I know I digressed a little bit, but they're going to ask the right questions. And I think we need to bring everybody in on the conversation. And I also think cross-collaboration between districts and networks is vital. I get a lot of great ideas and information from people who live in Louisiana, North Carolina, Florida. I'm always talking to people in different networks and different districts, and I know that what they're dealing with is going to look slightly different. Like in a 5 charter school network, it looks different than in a school district with 60,000 students. It just looks different. But some of those ideas can still be shared. What's happening in pockets? What can be implemented at scale? So I also just encourage the community of educators in AI to kind of come out of being in the shadows, and let's have open and honest conversations about it and challenge each other's ideas and share ideas. What's working, what's not working, so that we can all make sure this is being implemented ethically. The wave is coming. There's nothing we can do about it, and that's part of why I was like, all right, let me get into this because I know it's coming. Just like PowerPoint, Microsoft Word, and laptops, there's nothing you can do.
Right, it's arrived.
What do you do about we've talked about, we kind of made up the term, what was it?
Cognitive lift.
Cognitive lift guilt.
Yeah.
So we feel we're seeing that it's a real thing, that because educators are so used to working so hard and long hours that they almost feel like they're cheating, or it's, they feel guilty about having AI do some of these tasks. So what would you say to those educators that are feeling that way?
Yeah, it's tough. We're very idealistic people. I'll give this example. I'll give you 2 examples. One, I was talking to my mother a couple Sundays ago. We were having a brunch as a family. And I said, she was challenging some of my thoughts about AI. And I appreciated it. And I said, Mom, when you used to take like handwriting tests, right? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, is that applicable at all today? And she said, no. So these things move. You used to feel guilty about having bad handwriting because then you couldn't be a writer. But now it's no longer relevant, and it opens up to more people. More people are able to participate in writing now. My handwriting is atrocious. I couldn't be a writer, right? Like you think about things like that. One of the oversimplified examples, and I know some people don't like this, spell check. I'm not a great speller. I used to have to take spelling tests and things like that, but now nobody's giving spelling tests because you have word processors that tell you how to spell words. So we've moved on to higher degrees of thinking in Bloom's taxonomy rather than just memorizing how you spell photosynthesis. So I think that we have to reframe this, and there have been ways before in education, typewriters, laptops. There have been ways before in educate data, actually looking at data and not just going off of instinct. We've had ways before in education. This is a big one, but we've had it before. It shifted the way we've thought. It shifted the way we've taught. It shifted a lot of things for us, even down to like showing videos is now like a common practice in classrooms that never used to exist. And some teachers used to feel like, I'm not showing a video because I need to teach my students everything. Now most educators are importing multiple modalities. So they're using something auditory, or they're using something visual, image, or they're using, and that's only possible with the technology that we have now versus just having, a standard textbook where you had these static images and things like that. We don't feel guilty about that anymore. We actually feel good because we're exposing our students to more ways of thinking, more modalities. We're reaching more diverse types of learners. And that might be something, as I'm talking, that I think we may want to talk about too. And this is something I try to talk about at length. We talk about differentiation for SPED students, students with 504, students with disabilities. How can we say no to something that actually will allow us to bridge those gaps? 10 students all reading on different grade levels, and now we have the ability to differentiate this lesson for each one. We have an opportunity to scaffold the reading for each one, to chunk the reading for each one. This is huge because no matter how hard you work, you still have to break those students into groups and grade the students who read from grades 1 to 3 together versus 1, 2, and 3 because you just didn't have time. And then you also neglected a lot of your students who, those students who need extensions, those students who finish their work early and are looking for more. Those students often get neglected, particularly in high-need environments. So this also gives you an opportunity to push those students who would otherwise be kind of twiddling their thumbs as well. So I try to go at it from an angle of how this impacts students, because all teachers, nobody gets into teaching to harm students. Nobody gets into teaching because they don't want students to do well. If this is a tool, and it's a tool, that's it. It's a tool. This is a tool that can help you have more of an impact on your students. Why would you not use it?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to ask your question?
That's so well said. Yeah.
Do I want to ask my question? You talked about this a little already, but the ed tech tools that are coming out, branded as AI ed tech tools, there's not a lot right now, but I think we kind of feel the same way as you were saying, just like ChatGPT with a script. So how do you recommend that districts evaluate these tools? And I know it's just a tool and it's not necessarily about the tool, but we have talked to people, we've talked to colleges that are adopting AI tools. One of our colleges here in Vermont is adopting Claude. So what should they look for so that they're choosing something that has substance versus like just superficial branding?
What's the need of the gap that you're addressing? That's the first question. With any other tool, I don't know why we think about this differently with AI, but like normally when you purchase an ed tech tool, you're addressing something specifically. Okay, we have math gaps. Okay, we need to find a tool, iExcel, iReady, MyCap, something that's going to support students with math interventions. That we're always addressing something specific. We're using a panorama or branching lines, MTSS, making sure we're looking at data and using our processes efficiently. There's specific use cases for any tool. AI can do a lot of things, but we should be considering what the use cases are. Are we looking for writing support? Are we looking for multiple modalities? Are we looking for better planning? What are we looking for? What is the goal here? I think if we start with the goal and reverse plan from there, we'll be able to implement the right tools and we'll do it with fidelity. And I think that each district will need something different. I'll give you guys an example. I went to public school and private school as a kid. When I went to my private school with, kids who had way more money than my family had, the challenges that they had were not around differentiation. We're not really around scaffolding. I don't even think we had a student with special needs in the whole school. So it looks different for how they might be looking at AI tools versus me working in a middle school in Southeast where my students are coming in with these tremendous gaps. These are the things I think we need to identify first. What is it that we're specifically trying to address? I'll give you guys a very specific example. We use an extension in one of our platforms that we use for our blended and virtual learning. And there's a tool embedded in that allows you to ask questions, give students hints, right? Things like that. And that's something that's helpful for some of our students who are virtual learners when the teacher who's on the virtual is not necessarily working individually with that student and they're in breakout sessions and things like that. Well, that's a specific use case for a specific need and a specific pain point, right? Like we don't buy cars just to buy cars. I want an electric car because I don't want to use gas to the environment, or I want a sports car because I like to go fast and it's my dream. I have 8 kids, so I'm going to buy a Suburban. There's a reason we do these things, and we need to think about what the use case is, because every AI tool is not going to be for everybody. And I'll add this too, and this is something that is not an original idea for me, but something someone brought up to me 2 weeks ago, and it was really smart. How do we want students in our communities interfacing? Do we want them interfacing directly with these tools, or do we want them interfacing through another tool? And I don't have the answer for that. I know how I lean, but there's a question. If we know everybody, Saudi Arabia just gave their entire, not Saudi Arabia, UAE just gave their entire population access to ChatGPT Plus. That means their entire population is going to be interacting with a generalized AI chatbot. So then do you want your students in the UAE directly working with that, with these custom, for instance, GPTs, or do you want them going through a layered proprietary system? Well, it kind of defeats the purpose if I'm giving everybody in my population access to the generative AI. Right. So I think it also just depends on what we really are trying to solve and what we believe in as networks, as districts, and more broadly and eventually as a society. What do we believe in around AI?
Makiri, like every time we talk to somebody, we spend the next hour and a half unpacking everything that came out of the conversation. So I'm guessing like two hours.
My head is swimming.
Yeah. So here's kind of a closing question for you. As we think about, we're all kind of heading into the summer months, quote unquote, and there's going to be this gap in presence and face time with our educators, right? There's going to be 30 days plus where our educators are not in the building, students are not in the building, and then we're going to come back. At the rate that AI is moving right now, that 30 days, there's going to be a brick wall waiting at the end of that 30 days. What are the type of things that you think are going to pop up?
You know, it's funny. I'm in a meeting, and we're talking about 6-month pilots, and I almost passed out. I was like, team, maybe a 6-week sprint, but that might not even, it moves too fast. And I know traditional educators, let's test this out for 6 months. Let's look at the data. It moves too fast. They'll be on version 8.0 by then. Like, we really can't do it. I think one of the major challenges you're going to see, there's going to be a huge gap. You're going to have your educators who are diving into AI. They're going to come back with 87,000 tools that they want to use in full integration. You're going to have those people who are still stubborn. You're going to have those people who are sticking their toe. You're going to have people on all different levels of use and all different levels of belief. And that is going to be, I think, the biggest challenge. How do you even corral the number of tools that proliferate? How do you even corral tools? I'm literally working on contracts for procurement, and I'm seeing AI tools that are being suggested, AI tools that are embedded that we haven't used, AI tools that are add-ons, AI tools that are, I'm like, at this rate, I'm going to need professional development for each individual tool. Yep. And I had to think about, like, okay, what can I talk about at our instructional kickoff versus what do I need individual schools to work on? If one school is using a Schoology with an embedded tool and another campus is not using it, well, that Schoology does not, that Power Buddy, that's not applicable across the network. That's just applicable at one site. So that needs to be site-specific PD. Then do you actually have somebody in that campus who can actually do that, or do you have to do it? A lot of the time, and this is something else. I know I'm digressing. I'm sorry. No. AI conversation is not being pushed by upper-level leadership in most districts and in most schools. It's not the principal using it. It's the AP. It's not the CEO or the chiefs using it. It's someone in the middle who's using it. It's not IT using it. It's somebody who's the number 2 or number 3 on the data team. And I've spoken to a few districts and I found that out. And it's like, okay, the conversation is not being pushed and addressed. by the people at the top. What does that mean for education as well? When the principal's not using it, but the AP has it embedded in everything that they do. It's kind of, it's a very unique and adaptive challenge. I have one teacher who is a super advanced AI user, and I'm scared to even talk about what she's doing. She's got her students interacting with it. She has a whole system for how her students will use a Chen or a Grok to help solicit feedback on what they're working on. That is the future, but that is very forward thinking. And I'm not even sure that the leadership would be able to handle it if they heard that, right? And I think that goes back to the secret use. It's still something that's not openly talked about. I know for a fact almost every teacher in my district is using it because I've had these one-on-one individual conversations. My guys, it's not familiar. This is just data collection. Where you're using it, or how you're using it, or are you using it? And when I communicated that to Central, they're shocked. But that's what's happening, and that's why I say you start with teachers, because teachers they're gonna use tools. They're gonna do whatever they got to do. They might not tell you about it because they don't want to get in trouble, but they're gonna use it. So let's open up the floor. I would even go so far as to say if I were still in one school, if I was not, over a network of schools, I would actually sit down and try to have a circle, a round table conversation with my staff. Hey, let's talk about AI, the elephant in the room. How do you feel about it? Let's share thoughts in a way that is community focused, community driven, that is no one's attacking. But let's start talking about this, because no matter what you believe about this, we have to handle this together. And we need all parties for responsible and ethical decision making. Human-centered and ethics. Those are the two things that have to be in the conversation. Human-centered and ethics. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
It's a good answer. That is a good answer.
Yeah.
Thank you very, 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 very much, Makiri. That was amazing. We want to maintain a connection with you, though, and ask you several thousand questions in the next couple of weeks, if you're okay with that.
Oh, absolutely. I would love to do this again, talk to you guys. I'm always open to talk about this. And I would love to hear how it's going for you guys. I know we have very different demographics, but it sounds like we're very aligned. We're just trying to put the best possible tools and empower our educators with the best possible tools to get the best outcomes for our students. And if we can all start there, we all want the best tools for our teachers and the best outcomes for students. I think we can all find common ground.
Yeah, and your last answer was literally like you were walking through my head. So you were on point there.
Metaphorically.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.